Live from Rockford, you're watching a WIFR Fastcast.
Good afternoon. I'm Daniel Burbank from the studio today. Our top story on this 3:30 Fastcast: a Rockford man is charged in the death of his 5-month-old son. 19-year-old Calvin Rudolph is charged with endangering the welfare of a child, resulting in death. In December last year, officers were called to the 500 block of North Elm Street in Mount Prospect for an unresponsive infant. The boy was taken to a hospital where he later died. Investigators say Rudolph's child died because he was in an unsafe sleeping environment. Detectives believe that he left his son for 7 hours without checking on him. Rudolph is expected back in court on September 11th. 35-year-old Colton Murphy could face more than 125 years in prison after a child exploitation investigation. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul accuses him of having child sexual abuse materials. Tuesday, Oregon police arrested Murphy in his home in the 200 block of North 6th Street. He's charged with disseminating and possessing child sexual abuse material. He's currently in Ogle County Jail. The Lee County Sheriff's Office is investigating damage to 3 flock license plate readers. Deputies say over the past 3 weeks, the incidents have happened in the area of Interstate 39 in eastern Lee County. Investigators believe the suspects cut the poles containing the cameras, which could cost hundreds of dollars to repair. The county sheriff says he understands the cameras are somewhat controversial, but says the cameras still have legitimate investigative value. Deputies say if you know anything about the damages, call them. The suspect or suspects could face up to 5 years in prison if convicted. Well, a GoFundMe is set up for the father of 19-year-old Chloe Verne Lau. Boone County investigators say she was killed when 28-year-old Shaquan Hayes crashed head-on into the SUV that Chloe was riding in. The crash happened Saturday on Spring Creek Road near Olson Road in Belvedere. Verne Lau died at a nearby hospital. The GoFundMe organizer says the goal is to reach $7,000 toward memorial and funeral expenses. Well, the man accused of attempting to assassinate President Donald Trump and members of his administration at April's White House Correspondents Association dinner was back in court today. Washington correspondent Katrin Asaf has an update on what happened and how soon we could see this case go to trial.
Cole Allen, the accused White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter, entered the courtroom in shackles Thursday morning, hoping that would be the last time he would appear in chains. His team filed a motion for Allen to appear unrestrained in future hearings, a request the judge denied. The reasoning? Allen is accused of dashing past a security checkpoint on the night of April 25th to attempt to enter the ballroom where President Trump was, with the president himself saying Allen was, quote, quite fast, he was like a blur, end quote. Upon the judge citing that quote and Allen's alleged speed as the reasons behind the restraints, Allen appeared to smirk. The rest of Thursday's status conference was less eventful, focusing on both sides' readiness to set a trial date. The government was prepared to start looking at weeks next April, but the defense requested more time to go through discovery and consult their own experts on a few critical pieces of forensic evidence, which means right now a trial is not yet in the calendar. The judge set a follow-up status conference for October 5th, where he requested both sides come to an agreement and get something scheduled for next year. In Washington, I'm Katrin Asaf.
It is that time of the Fastcast to take a look at our 7-day forecast on this bright and sunny day, though we are looking at the chance of some showers returning tomorrow. The humidity will also tick up a little bit as well. Chief Meteorologist Kira Miner will track out the hour-by-hour forecast as is expected Friday morning around 5 in the morning. Now, as well as we look at the weekend, I mean, such a beautiful forecast, though. The upper, even mid-70s, sunny skies and lows of the mid-50s, so that's about average for this time of year. And then, of course, as we head into next week, we're sitting in the mid to upper 70s, partly cloudy skies on Monday, and that is the theme through the rest of this 7-day forecast, is sitting at just about 80 degrees for our high temperature. The IHSA football kicks off across the state line this Friday. Our climate will undergo some massive changes during the season. In this edition of Shelter from the Storm, meteorologist DJ Baker looks at how our weather can impact the game on the gridiron.
While our high school football teams prepare for the upcoming 15-week season, the coaches and coordinators are also keeping an eye on our weather because we will experience some major weather swings. Warmer conditions at the beginning of the season will test athletes' bodies and their conditioning. Heat accelerates exhaustion and can lead to dehydration. Coaches tend to use more substitute players early in the season, and athletes must be hyper-vigilant about getting enough liquids in their bodies. Cold weather at the end of the season can exacerbate injuries because our bodies struggle to warm up and get loose. The cold air also makes the football harder to catch by causing the exterior leather to condense and harden. It almost feels a bit like a brick. That's why you'll typically see more run plays or short tosses during frigid weather. Rain has a similar effect on the game. In fact, you don't see a lot of points scored by either team. When the ball gets waterlogged, it gets heavier and harder to pass and catch. The added weight messes with the quarterback's mechanics, forcing him to put a bit more power behind even the shortest tosses. Deep balls are next to impossible to throw during rainy games. That allows defense to play closer to the line of scrimmage and essentially shuts down the run game. Dampness also means less friction, so tight ends and receivers find it tough to catch the football, and it often leads to more incompletions. The football itself takes a lot of punishment from the weather. In addition to the cold air and rain, heat and humidity can affect how the piece of equipment works. When it's hot and sticky outside, a football becomes more elastic and springier. That is a field goal kicker's dream. It affects how energy is transferred from the player's foot to the ball, increasing accuracy and distance. But when the temperature drops, the ball is less elastic. You can't kick the ball as far, and it is more difficult to hit your target. To put that in perspective, a 52-yard field goal in moderate temperatures can be made about 55% of the time, but drop the temperature to 30 degrees or below, the overall success rate falls to around 30%. Finally, the strength and direction of the wind can play a big role in the flow of a game. A 20-mile-per-hour wind blowing side on the sideline can steer a kicked football nearly 10 yards off course. If the wind is blowing toward a team attempting a field goal, the players know that the football likely won't travel as far, and the kicker will need to keep it at a lower angle, but that also increases chances of the defense blocking or tipping the kick. Put the wind at a team's back, and the kick, pass, or punt will fly farther. Not knowing the forecast on game days is a big fumble. Download the RNF Weather app so you can stay ready for game time.
Join us next week as we look at how leaves change colors in the fall. Well, Newburgh Road in Rockford is back open after several months of construction. Alyssa Kelly has a preview of city leaders' excitement on street improvements.
Finally just got done loading up the car. I'm actually on my way to meet with Rockford city leaders. They are celebrating the completion of Newburgh Road reconstruction. Now, I have some questions I'm asking today. I want to know how this is going to impact residents, drivers, maybe even bicyclists on the road. But I also want to look at future plans to help with road safety down the road for, again, Rockford residents, Rockford bicyclists in the area. So there's a lot of questions I'll be asking Rockford city leaders today, and that will be coming up later on our evening shows and then later on RockfordNewsFirst.com. So make sure to stay tuned.
Well, as students return to school, some may experience anxiety while adjusting to new routines. Dr. Megan Yanni recommends consistent sleep, healthy meals, and daily physical activity to help children adjust. Parents should also watch for warning signs, including withdrawal, major behaviors or grade changes, and frequent headaches or stomach aches before school.
I think, there was a big spike in kids' mental health concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot more anxiety, a lot more depression, but it is also positively more talked about. So more people are feeling more safe to share when they're having concerns with their mental health. And so it can feel like there's a big uptick as well, but it's thankfully more talked about and, less of a bias or concern if someone brings it up.
Well, Oregon High School is ranked one of the nation's best high schools, according to a U.S. News and World Report. The publication analyzes data from tens of thousands of schools and looks at college readiness, state assessment, and graduation rates. Oregon's Superintendent P.J. Capozzi says that district leadership is proud of this recognition and plans to keep raising the bar at Oregon High School. The Village of Rockton Board of Trustees votes to approve the building at 120 West Main Street as a historic landmark. The location is Piccadilly Antiques. The late-era Victorian building was constructed in 1908 and began as Hopkins Meat Market. This is the fifth landmark designated by the village in this category. The village's Historic Preservation Commission launched more than a decade ago to attract more visitors to the